My name's Clare Slaney, and I'm a counsellor based in London. John and Sandra and I have known each other for a couple of years, and I proposed that it would be interesting to interview them to find out more about the people who are not in the limelight, particularly Sandra, who is always in the chat room helping people sort things out and so on. And very graciously, Sandra and John agreed, so here we are.
Thank you.
We can see the chat room. All three of us will have an eye on that to see if any particular questions come up. If we miss it, just let us know. Sandra obviously is going to be in front of the camera and so isn't going to be able to do an awful lot if something goes down your end of the world. So if you need to refresh the page or go to Firefox, is that right, Sandra?
Yes, yeah, refreshing if it sometimes maybe stops. Sometimes the internet can kind of be blipping a little bit. So yeah, if you refresh your page and you're right, maybe use another browser sometimes helps as well, hopefully.
Brilliant. So, are you ready?
Yes.
I think we are just going to shut the door over. We've got our animals with us, haven't we?
Yes.
Charlie's in the room. You've got your cats, Clare, and Maisie's there, Sandra.
Yes, I've got a cat sleeping just now, so it's fine.
Thanks for having us, Clare. We really appreciate you kind of suggesting this and being up for, I don't know, seeing how well we behave on the other side of the experience.
It wasn't about how well you behave, John. It's just finding out more about you both, actually. So knowing who's behind the interviews and so on. So maybe John, would you like to start and say a bit about who you are and what brought you here?
Yeah, okay. It's really weird having the other being asked the question, who am I? Well, I'm also a counsellor like you, Clare, and I'm loving seeing one of your cats. Fantastic.
Yes.
Across the back.
So this year, 2005, will be 10 years out of training as a counsellor. So it's like, that moment where I can say, I've been a therapist for more than 10 years now. Maybe I'll start to feel experienced. And I do some training, I guess, at Temenos. We've got a person-centred psychotherapy training program, and we do online events, I guess. That's kind of not the answer to your question, is it? You're more asking about the history. But I guess I've always run a little cleaning company, pretty much since I left school. And I guess at some point I thought, I wanted to challenge myself in a different way, and that's what led to training as a counsellor. And I've always been into computers, so I trained quite quickly after my basic training as an online therapist. And then that led to online events, online training, and here we are, 6 years later, I think. I think we've had our 6th year anniversary, Sandra, I think, in online events. So it's amazing. Yeah. And
Sandra, what about you?
Yeah, so my background, I'll start my background. Previous to online events, I worked for many, many years in the HMRC, working as a customer contact advisor, an advisory role within a team. So that was many years now, a lot of experience and a lot of technical experience as well, getting to know computer systems and things. And like John, I kind of love trying to learn all that. For me, it's more just a learning process. One thing comes on top of another, but that's kind of got a lot there. At the moment, I'm studying to do my business management degree. So I'm nearly finished my HND, and then obviously I'll progress, hopefully, onto my business, the actual degree. So that's where I'm just now, no longer with HMRC, getting my study in, doing the degree, and obviously working with John on online events. So that was kind of previous, but it all kind of ties in together, all of the roles, you know, from what we've done previously, and then obviously my studying as well, and my degree as well.
Thanks, Sandra. I imagine working on the HMRC customer service thing is an absolute test of your patience.
Yeah. Yeah, it definitely is, and every day is different for the patients wise, you know. But it does test, and is a good way to kind of gain the skills as well. Yeah.
I imagine that you're going to have to be quite empathic with people who are phoning up because they've had to wait a while, and it's their taxes.
Yeah.
How did you cope with all of that?
That side of it is, I suppose, trying to be relaxed for the person on, you know, that's phoning in, because we would maybe have a look at the numbers and think that you know, the waiting times, everybody's phoned HMRC at some point or at some helpline, and it is difficult, you know, when you're waiting. So my mind is right. There is a lot to get through, and it's to try and help the person get into that maybe a calmer place if they can, you know, by me not trying to be maybe aggressive to them. And obviously for customer service, that's, you know, it's really getting that, the balance of what needs to be done, but also, you know, it's about, this is a person at the other end of the phone, and we can work through it together. And that's kind of how I would do my customer advising kind of.
Okay, so how did you two sort of get together with online events? Who had the concept? How did that come into being? What's the foundation behind that, I guess?
I'll let you go first.
Am I going to go first? Okay. Well, I was part of, and still am part of, an organisation called ACTO, the Association for Counselling and Therapy Online, and part of the exec committee for that organisation, organising their first conference called Optia, which is still going. And so we thought, well, it's a conference about working online as a therapist, and the conference, well, surely it should be online, this conference. But I guess 6 years ago, the cost of bringing in a company to do that was just prohibitive, you know, for a tiny organisation. So I thought to myself, well, how hard can this be, really? Which Sandra knows is kind of my style, you know. So I bought a kind of laptop, and I think I borrowed my dad's camera, and as we kind of started to put that together, I thought, well, maybe there's a business here, you know, in the world of psychotherapy, that conferences could reach out beyond the conference room, if you like, which was 2008, I guess, you know, just the beginning of that. So I thought, well, if we want to do a business, we need a banner. And so I got a banner made by a publisher, and then that's, Sandra, this is the bit of the story you always tell, isn't it?
That's right. Yeah, like that. It's just the way John worked, you know. If something can be done, no, it doesn't seem like it can be done, then we can make it so it's doable. So yeah, one day we were in our parents' house, and John just came through the door with a huge banner, put it up, this is my next business idea. And I didn't, you know, it wasn't surprising in the fact that, you know, it was an idea, but it was like, oh, that's interesting. And then that's kind of how it goes. But that, you know, is kind of like the idea's there, and it can happen, you know. But yeah, that's kind of how I first seen online events and seen the logo, and I thought, oh, that's great.
It's quite a family affair, isn't it? I mean, your siblings, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Your brothers helped with some of the design work on the webpage, yes?
Yeah, Martin built the website and has been at a number of events, controlling the computers. And,
yes.
Yeah. Josh, our brother-in-law, does a lot of camera work for us now. And well, in that first event, I grabbed my dad and Sandra, of course, and we went down to try and think what city it was we went to first for Octave. Was it Nottingham, Sandra?
Yes, yeah, we went down to Nottingham.
So there we are, the three of us in Nottingham, and people, we're filming this conference and it's getting online, and people are going, "Oh, this is really interesting. We've never seen anything like this before. Is this something you do a lot?" And we're
Yeah.
like, this is the first time we've ever attempted this, and but I guess it was lovely that we kind of trusted each other. We were up for giving it a go, and
Yeah.
And I remember when we were talking, John, you were saying something about failure isn't really an issue. If things don't work, you learn from it and just work around it. Is that still what you're doing?
yeah, I think so. I mean, you read it a lot in business books now, or the books that I'm reading. Like, failure is about learning, and I think that's, Sandra, we've kind of seen it that way. That let's try this out, and if that doesn't work, we'll try something else. And so I think some people talk to us now like, "Oh, what we do now is like the end product of maybe a detailed business plan or something that we kind of constructed." But I guess that's like the person-centered approach. We've just kind of leaned into it and see what would happen. And every now and again, you and me, Sandra, are going, "Well, what do you think we'll do next? Or what do you think about this?" And we just try it and see if it works. And so there's something about the like being able to bear that anxiety of things not working out, or the nervousness of that.
So what's the philosophy? What's your... I know you've got a person-centred professional background, John, and I know, Sandra, that you are quite naturally person-centred by the sound of things. But I'm wondering if there's a sort of a philosophy behind the way that online events works.
Yeah, I think... Oh, I'm just starting again. Is that
On you go.
You'll have to shut me up then after. Well, yeah, I think there is. I think both of us, Sandra, are really into a kind of flat power structure, in the sense that like learning should be for everyone, and there shouldn't be an exclusion to that. And I think as we were starting online events, not long after, 2008, the economy crashed into it. I lost a lot of a chunk of my cleaning work that took a lot of the expendable cash out of my life, I guess. And suddenly I wasn't allowed to go to conferences, in the sense that, because I couldn't pay. And that was a bit of a different experience for me, after having, some extra money in my life from running my own business. And that really informed the experience of like, well, I think I've still got something to offer to a conference, a learning experience, even if it isn't cash, and it really, as Sandra and I talked about this, we thought, well, the transaction just isn't you pay to go to a learning experience and someone then dumps learning into your head. It's more interactive than that, and of course the speaker often will be getting the attention for their products, whether it's a book or a training course, and often the interaction of the audience is also a value for the speaker. So we thought, right, well, how can the economy's falling apart. We could see that in the conference world. Could we build something else? Could we think about learning and events in a different way, in a way that people are not thinking about it, and in a way that kind of celebrates and recognises everybody's contribution? The person who's maybe done some research or some writing, the audience have got some ideas, Sandra and I that are kind of can bear the anxiety of things not working, and bring us all together and see what we could, see what would happen, I guess. And
in the chat room, you must see that quite clearly, Sandra. the way that everybody's in there, therapists from all modalities, people who aren't therapists.
Yeah, and that's, I suppose that's part of our vision as well, that, like as John was saying, that it is not kind of closed down to either individual, or choosing, who makes the, the comment or comes in to the chat room, and that does, and that I think then builds on the learning and the interaction as a, as a group. But yeah, that's, having the chat room was the main thing we had, but that was the whole part, wasn't it? That it was to be the conference being streamed, but there had to be that interaction with the chat room. That was one of our main points, and well, that was my main job, so it's good that I was there. But that was one of the main things, because we understood that, well, how we learn is we interact. That's how we learn, as opposed to I've done a lot of PowerPoint, and lots of people probably have, screen after screen, sitting at your work, maybe trying to learn something. But yeah, having that, that everybody's on the same, we've come here for the same reason, we'll take maybe different things from it, but there's no kind of higher, as John was saying, that kind of flattish, that's kind of the way we want, had in a vision, but as now we can see that happening as well.
Very clearly. I mean, there's a comment come up in the chat room just now from Di. It's ironic that you are siblings, as being in the chat room can feel like being part of a wee family. And I think that's lovely, People do tend to know each other from the chat room.
Yeah, that's true. And a lot of friends that I've made, from people come along the chat room and then each other. So yeah, that's a lovely comment. That's great.
Yeah. So there's a flat hierarchy. There's a very relaxed attitude about doing things. There's a desire to make this more than about just money and ability and qualifications. It feels as if this is a real experimental way of putting person-centered ways of being out into the world with new technology.
Yeah, I think this also reflects some of the attitudes at Temenos, which is a Greek word for space set aside. And I think so the way that we think about the approach there, the person-centered approach, is about we're opening up a space for learning, but what might come into the space might be something quite other, might be CBT. We're doing a lot of TA stuff at online events. We've had some psychodynamic stuff going on, and so it's like the values are really described well by that approach, the person-centered approach, and the being a family. I think that it's lovely to hear Di say that. That's what we're about, and in that, I guess, in that space, it's like we don't want to control what then grows out of it or something, and so it's like that, but which I think can be a little bit of a surprise, I think, in the community that we interact in, because it's like, well, almost, well, what are you then? Are you person-centered? Are you CBT? Are you TA? But it's like, well, it's like those values inform the experience of the container, I think.
I'm wondering if you've come up against any difficulties working across modalities. So say if you have somebody who does something psychodynamically, or I know you've got a lot of experience of working with TA. Have there been any sort of friction or anything like that has happened?
Well, I think it has. I mean, it's a bit anecdotal, but I think at times it can feel a bit challenging in the person-centered community that we then have engaged with other modalities.
Right.
But I've also had comments from practitioners within that approach. And of course, we did a lot in that approach to begin with, Sandra, didn't we? That because that's the people I knew, or the people I knew people in that approach, and the person-centered. But someone said to me recently, John, and this is a very passionate person-centered practitioner, you've even got me watching TA events. So it's great.
Heresy.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, so I think it can be both sides, you know, a bit of friction, but also, well, maybe in that, you know, it's almost like we're being dragged into other spaces, which, you know, I think that's what we're up for, Sandra, aren't we? We're like, well, let's learn everything we can. We're excited to hear other things, and we might not always agree, or might rub us a little bit, but let's get in and learn and get excited about each other, I think. Yeah.
What's it like for you, Sandra? Well, that's a big question, isn't it? I mean, it's completely different. You're very exposed, it seems to me. Usually you're very helpful in the chat room, and that's where you're present and you're answering everybody's questions. But here you are now. We can see into your living room.
No. Yeah, it's very strange, I must say. And I said that before I come on, you know, like all the little things that I've been doing while John's getting himself ready and, you know, to be in front of the camera. And I'm pleased to get a sense of how it feels for John. I know he does it properly and he does it well, but also to get a sense of what it's like for presenters coming on to present on online events. Because I would be the kind, you're going to be, it'll be okay, you know, it's going to be, you know, and we're here in the chat room and, you know, that angst of, I wouldn't appreciate it, you know, and this is the very first time I've done it in all the years. So on that side, I feel that I appreciate all these presenters who come along and, you know, because as John says, we just go, let's try it, you know.
Yes.
And for everybody, let's try it. It's nerve-wracking. So for that side of it, then, you know, I'm getting a sense of what it feels like, and also wanting to say a big thank you really to everybody that has supported us, you know, and, you know, that I feel that I want to be part of that as well. So put my face on the camera. That's a way for me today to do it. So
yeah, it's great to hear your voice and see your face in movement, so we can see your icon. But, you know, it's really good, Sandra, to see and hear you in the flesh, so to speak.
That's lovely.
I remember when we were speaking earlier, you were saying that one of the things about online events and the way that you're both moving it forward is that you don't want to sacrifice anyone. That made a real impact on me, that this was an important part of the way that you both work. Can you say more about that?
Not sacrifice anyone, did you say, Claire?
Yeah, we were talking about the business growing and moving and changing and adapting, but that it was quite important to both of you that people weren't sort of left. The word sacrifice was really such a potent word for me.
Well, thanks for saying that again, and it gives me a moment just to be thinking about that. Yeah, like, well, we're talking about, I think people are surprised by how ambitious I am, I think. I guess, and that I'm more visible, and I think we both are, Sandra, you know, like and part of that comes from our excitement and our passion. But it's like, there's something about business doesn't have to be, or learning and developing technologies, it doesn't have to be an either or with people. I don't think. And it's like, how do we hold both? You know, how can we grow and do more exciting things, and also really value the groups that we're part of, kind of every week and multiple times a week sometimes. And I think that's just so important to us. And in a way, business can get a bad name, you know, like almost like it's either the machine or the human, but it's got to be both.
Yeah, and there was something about the way that, as you say, that it can be a machine and we can stand on each other to get where we want to be. But Sandra, there's something quite different about that in this business model, it seems.
Yeah, and I suppose for the way John and I work, because I think what we're talking about, I don't know if it's kind of going into this, is that, you know, the different parts that happen, like particularly at the live event, that, you know, we're not kind of going into each other, you know, or me saying, you need to be doing that, John, and, you know, like, I know John knows what he's doing really well, and John knows that I'll do what I'm doing really well, but without having to kind of look at, you know, making sure we don't need to know each other's jobs inside out. We know it kind of all comes together, and that takes a lot of trust, you know. And then for also people who are coming along to either view or in the chat room, that they're then part of that as well, you know. So not sacrificing, and that if somebody can't cope with technology, right, it's not going to be for them, you know. That's not really an option, you know. We'll try to make sure everybody can get in. If they have difficulty with technology, they're helped for that way. If, you know, if they can get in the chat room and they're here, you know, then it all kind of starts to flow. And I think that as well, you know, like, everybody kind of has the part to play in it, but it's not, you know, trying to, you know, each other, trying to make sure, oh, you better be doing that right, or, you know, it's a lot of trust that can kind of evolve from both doing what we do good, you know. Like, that's why we've chosen our roles as well. Like, John's great in front of the camera, you know, to be the interviewing style, and I have that more eye for detail for either chat room or emails, and it kind of can work that way. But nobody's, you know, we try our best that nobody's then sacrificed in that. You know, if we are moving really fast, but, you know, it's everybody can come with us, you know, that way.
Yeah. Kay has just said it is all about trust. It's allowing people to work to their strengths, allowing them to get on with it, trusting people in the chat room to behave in a particular way. And I must say, whenever I've been in the chat room, it's always been pretty, I wanted to say professional, but that's not the right word. It's felt collegiate. There's been all kinds of people in the chat room, and it feels really as if we are careful of each other's boundaries.
Yeah.
And I think that's the sort of one of the principles of the work that you're doing. You seem very both of you seem very careful around working politely and professionally and in a contained way with people.
Yeah, that feels really important, Claire. Absolutely. And like, as I'm hearing you speak, Sandra, I'm thinking about, like, there's something about how we feel about each other. I guess that trust, you know, that we're talking about, that we want to permeate out into to the experiences that we offer. Yeah. Yeah. And like, I think there's something about an educational philosophy in there, Sandra. You were saying earlier about how we learn, and like, I think when I feel safe, my brain, my whole body starts to become much more able to absorb and to learn. And it's so different from being at school, you know, and that pressure, or, you know, other learning systems where you are a cog in the machine. And I think it's a big part of how we feel about the events. You know, we relax and we learn. Whoever we're privileged to work with, you know, in the interview, if they relax, all their richness comes to the surface, and we can kind of love that. And the same in the chat room. So, well, I was noticing Daisy's comment about being a servant to the relationship, and other people go, I'm going to write that down, and you know, and sometimes we love it, Sandra, don't we? When someone puts, I'm going to use that with my supervisee this week, or,
like, yes.
you know, and it's like, this is real life, you know, and things are changing, but because we feel cared about and safe, I guess. So, this is me on my soapbox now, but it's such an important part of just how it feels to be around a learning experience, I think. Yeah.
You say soapbox, John, and you kind of shut yourself down a bit there. Yeah. What's your soapbox? What are you yelling from your soapbox?
Well, I think I think there's so much said about technology and, you know, the rise of the machines, and we're all terrified by Facebook and Twitter and all the things. Where I think part of my soapbox is about this ability to connect like this is, for me, it's a channel for our empathy. I see that as a species, our empathy is getting switched on by our ability to connect, not just with the people who are physically present to us. I think that's what I love about working with Sandra. It's like to me, like our ability to kind of really be empathic with people we can't see and might never meet. Like, to me, that is part of what's possible for us as a species, and that it's almost like our tiny little contribution to that, the forward movement of humanity. I mean, it's minuscule, but it feels like it's important, you know? Yeah. So that's part of my soapbox, I think.
So this sounds a really wide vision. It sounds as if it's something to do with culture, that you would like to create boundaries of, let's call them person-centered boundaries for a shorthand, that you'd like to create a person-centered culture within the online world that you're involved with, and vice versa, within the therapeutic world online somehow, so that it sort of feeds back off each other. The technology informs the relationship, and the relationship informs the technology, something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's fascinating. We're so many of us are getting smartphones, and what are we doing? We're getting on them to tell each other about our lives, and you know, and there's a lot of difficult things happen in those spaces. But it's like, it's not just unhelpful things that can happen. I was listening to a guy called Jason Silva, who's on YouTube. Definitely check him out. And he's saying, like, the technology is an extension of us. You know, and I see us as humans, as empathic beings, and like that potential is becoming unleashed, not shut down by the technology. And of course, that's a view. And I think as Sandra and I work together, it feels like we're experiencing that and living that and loving it. You know, that we can come together globally, maybe even as a small group, and understand each other. Yeah. Sandra, I'm going on and on. I don't know.
Yeah. I suppose the technology can be a little bit frightening, you know, in that, and maybe moving into the space where people, like you're saying, that it's kind of new for people now to be, even in our own families, some people's just getting smartphones. That's, you know, we're kind of like, well, it's kind of a part of us now, you know, like we can kind of be on social networks throughout the place, but that coming together on the networks and learning about that, and then putting that into with the therapeutic field, you know, and kind of like so it's a bit of us, you know, so a bit of us is then can kind of care for it, you know. It's instead of it being kind of thrown out there, and but that we can then bring it all together, I think, with the relationships.
Yeah, I think Janie has got it really, she's pinned down what you're saying, I think, Sandra. Empathic beings who are shut down by living in the world as it is, but we can react differently online with each other.
Yeah. And create a space for that. And I suppose that's kind of what we kind of help each other to do. And then, you know, and putting that out and within online events, when we're doing a live event or meeting people, that relationship then kind of builds and builds.
And spreads. It does become a new culture, I think. Di says, I feel you've offered me an opportunity in a space where I can deeply connect online.
That's great.
That is lovely feedback. Thank you for that, Di. Yeah. And I think, and this is, I suppose, part of the person-centered philosophy. It's almost like each experience is the world I think for me, as it was, and we can lean into something. You know, in our history here in the UK, you know, all of our grandparents experienced World War II. You know, in the UK and all of Europe, the whole world recovering from that. You know, as therapists who understand what trauma shuts down empathy, but we're kind of leaning into a possibility of, you know, a much more empathically connected world, which to me is just, it's mind-blowing, the possibilities and excitement of that.
So over the years, excuse me, over the years, this kind of technology, the internet, has sort of gone through real evolution. We know that online disinhibition occurs. We know that it's really easy to get carried away when we're online. We know that we have to condense what we want to say. I mean, in the chat room, you've only got about 200 characters that you can use per sentence, I think. So we're having to learn different ways of thinking, different ways of speaking, different ways of relating that are very different. And that feels like a big evolutionary movement. Humans are changing with technology.
Yeah, it's a very fascinating and exciting time, I think. Like the internet's just getting warmed up, really, you know, and our machines are just getting to the point where we can start to use it, and it's like, yeah, there is those kind of darker spaces and people hurting other people in there. But it really is lovely to be in a space. Well, as you were saying, Sandra, you know, we really appreciate everybody who's supported us and who has been up for trying it out. You know, we didn't know if it would work. Each event, we don't really know, you know, is it going to work? And everybody who comes and is part of the experience is seeing what happens too. So we appreciate that trust. Yeah.
Sonia says, you two have so broadened our experience of technology and how we might use it.
That's lovely. So, thank you, Sonia. Yeah.
Technology, relationship, it's all coming together here. Now, you've said that it can be a bit perceived to be a bit dangerous, and in other fora it has been dangerous. There's online bullying and so on and so on. And I wonder if you've had people say to you, "Oh, what are you doing? Isn't this dodgy?" How do you know what your boundaries are, Sandra? How do you know what the boundaries are, John? Have you had any potential criticism?
I think we've had questions about, well, can it really work? You know, how can this work? Because I can see you nodding, Sandra, too, like that almost, well, how can we learn, like, you know, especially about therapeutic relationships. You know, we're so used to learning in a group, in the circle, in the room, and it would never replace, you know, what we're up to and other people are up to online. It's never going to replace that. Yeah, some questions about, well, like, I think, and then people come in the chat room and experience it and go, I love it, this is great, I just never imagined it could be like this. Is that what you would say, Sandra, or what?
Yeah, that, like, I think maybe people's unsure about, you know, with the chat room, does it need to be moderated, or, you know, what's going to happen, and, you know, you're saying it's maybe more of being unsure about it, and I think then it just develops into what it is on that particular event, you know, and that everybody is there for their own purpose, and it also then fits in, you know, that's the way we wanted it to be, wasn't it? That it is a space for, say, in the chat room, what you would want to say, you know, if you were in a learning environment face to face. And, you know, as John said, that we didn't, you know, we're like, well, we're open to see if it'll, you know, if that process will happen. And it did. So it's not that we were thinking, oh, it'll never happen. You know, we have discussed, you know, what we need to check, you know, just continually checking the chat room, and but that's the environment then kind of created itself, if that makes sense, and it kind of then everybody has a supportive, view of this.
Yes.
And that, right, I'll take what I need to take, but that everybody's supportive within the chat room as well. That's what we found so far, and being able to leave it as open as we have.
No, that totally resonates with me. Sorry, go on, John.
Yeah, well, I think that, as you say that, Sandra, that is where we've felt maybe more fear from other people, like about how do you almost have more control over that experience because you don't know what people are going to say or do. But actually, when the three of us, when we were talking the other day, we were talking about this, Claire, like how the environment actually so creates the behaviour. And Sandra, you've got a big red button, haven't you, where you can boot people out? Well, it's not a big red button, but there is that possibility if someone was to behave in a way that just wasn't helpful. But I think maybe once or something, and it's been someone who wasn't in the event. Somehow they've found the chat room, they've jumped in, and
and to promote something, I think.
Yeah. So I think that's been fascinating for us, isn't it, Sandra? That just how little of those difficulties arise.
Yes, Di again says, I've heard repeated use of the words trust and evolve, and that sums it up for me. There's great trust in whatever arises here to be growthful in some way for all involved. Openness and freedom in the chat room is important too, says Kay. Yeah. So you've only had to use the big red button once, Sandra?
Yeah. And a little bit of training to get how we need to do that. But maybe if it was a large event and somebody's thought, I could put a wee link in there and people can come over, and and that was mostly what it was, and it was just a little bit of please don't press like, it's not that I haven't put that link in there as a promotion or something. And so obviously we're aware of that because online is such an open space. But we can think about that, and then we kind of are ready for whatever happens. if that's the kind of way to look at it.
So I think you're publishing something in Tilt with Kate Anthony, is that right? Are you publishing an article?
Yeah. So Kate was just letting us know in the chat room earlier, wasn't she, that we've written a little article kind of about the philosophy, how it works, how it might compare to being in the room, I guess. And what we've done, we did 3 conferences, Sandra, in Second Life, or 4 maybe. And Claire, you were there as well, weren't we? We had a lot. I would think that was one of the highlights of the year when they were happening. People don't know Second Life. It's like a gaming environment with little characters that you communicate through. A whole counselling conferences from presenters all over the world, and yeah, that
was fun. I really wanted my avatar to have a tail, and for some reason I just couldn't get it going. But I think that's still possible. Definitely. So this is. I mean, there are lots of people. Kate and others are obviously working in cyberspace doing this, but it sounds as if you're bringing a particular philosophy to the work that is slightly different, maybe. What do you think, John? Different from other therapeutic work online? Am I on the right track or not?
Yeah, well, there was a comment earlier in the chat room about being surprised to find kind of person-centered work online, I guess. And I know, I mean, I did my online training with Kate and her amazing company, Online Therapy Institute. So a plug for OTI, great training. And like it feels really easy to see how like a CBT approach could translate into a digital area, because exercises or writing, but that let's just see what happens kind of approach that is so kind of representative of the person-centered approach takes a little bit more I don't know it's a different approach, and maybe doesn't look like it translates so easily online. But I guess every event that we do, Sandra, isn't it, we kind of by far the majority of people that we interview are really up for the conversation. So it's just how you started with us, Claire, isn't it? Well, what's your background? Where are you? Well, let's have a conversation. And we don't know if anybody's going to turn up. How will it be for the interviewee? But in that freedom, like what comes to the surface is just, so special. Or it feels. Well, I know that feels that way to me, and Sandra, we often talk about that, don't we? And and something about that freedom, I think, and like not being constrained by being scared, because it doesn't mean that Sandra and I are not scared.
Yeah.
You know, in that moment when you press the button to go online and the adrenaline's pumping, but it's that stepping into the unknown and what that can allow to happen, I guess.
Yeah, I'm thinking CBT works really well on computers, and computers, run CBT courses now for people, God help us. But it's the relationship, isn't it? And it seems that it's quite easy to make relationship in this context.
Yeah, well, as you were saying earlier, Sandra, we both made good relationships with loads of people, haven't we? And really loved that. And not that there might be a little bit CBT in our approach to help people get in.
Sure.
Contain anxiety, perhaps. Sandra,
Yes.
you're always doing a great job around that. But it is like that relational bit is just so important for us, for Sandra and I guess. And
Well, we've got about 10 minutes left.
My goodness.
And the next thing on my list is future. What's the future for online events? And what's the future for you as individuals, maybe? Look into your crystal balls and tell me everything.
We wish. I should have brought mine along.
Probably more of I was thinking earlier, Sandra, of me going, why don't we do this? You know, if you could see my hands go like that, and Sandra going, yeah, okay, John, well, maybe we could do a little bit. So more of that. I think that's one of the reasons we work well together, Sandra, isn't it? Like we can, well, I think we've both got big plans, haven't we? We both want to do stuff, and Oh, I've lost your sound, Sandra. Can you hear us, Sandra?
Oh, she's frozen. Sandra will be back in.
Sorry about that. I don't know what happened to me.
We can't see your video right now, but
okay. I probably just have to press a button here.
Ah, you're coming back.
Coming back. Sorry about that.
Oh, we can see you now. Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, John was telling me about his plans.
Yes. And it sounds as if you are this sort of... So John has this burst of inspiration or energy or whatever it is, but that you're the person, you said earlier, you're the person who just says, okay, let's look at the detail.
Yeah. Like, there's no doubt John has great ideas. I just say he does have great ideas to do things. And it wouldn't happen. Maybe the ideas can't come into play or happen until we come up with an idea, say, or John comes up with an idea, but it has to then go through a process of, sometimes I'll say, well, I don't think that is good to happen. That I would rather, why don't we do it this way? Or it's quite good that's maybe something we could do in the future. I suppose I would be more like that, but we can't do that until we've maybe tried, and
Yeah.
So it's not that's the way it works, kind of thing. But then we will most times end up doing it. So, but we find that way of like John's plans is probably bigger than mine is. I am more like bring it down to detail, but we don't then say, oh, let's not try it. We normally will still go for it. In the the events that we've got coming up with the conferences online, isn't that we've kind of done that together, haven't we, John? We had a talk about what's working, what's not working, and then set these in motion, and and that's something as well that this will be new for us this year, full online conference. but working together and, you know, honing it in, and that's how it kind of seems to work.
Yeah,
No.
absolutely. So what are the plans for this coming year? You've got a few conferences down?
Yeah, well, what we tried was to run our own conferences and have an in-the-room experience that we didn't charge for, and also have people come online, have a group online as well, and that was really exciting. But I think we're just not big enough to be able to afford that right now, I think. So we've done that a few times. So what we're going to do with our conferences this year is have them all on Skype, just like this. So on
Right.
Saturday, we've got our third Working with Children and Young People's Conference. And we're going to bring in the presenters on Skype, so we don't need a venue. And the presenters don't need to travel. And they can come for an hour and then get on with their day. And our hope is to use that format to bring in presenters from all over the world. So if we start early, like a kind of 7:30 in the morning, we don't have that this time. We've got a 7:30 presentation on Mind Dead, actually, for the great new program from BACP. But we could have presenters from New Zealand and Australia, and then as the time zone moves, you know, across Asia and Europe, and then finish.
That's tremendous.
As long as we're okay working late, I'm going, Sandra, is it okay to do a 12-hour day? You know, and finish with someone on the West Coast of the States or something.
Amazing.
You know, so, and we want to do something on politics, more on recovery, we've been relationships, so lots of different topics.
That sounds great. Di says it sounds so revolutionary. Brilliant idea, Graham. Graham says, are there any thoughts of a small peer supervision group? I think we can just set one up.
Well, absolutely we could.
Sounds good.
Yeah, absolutely we could.
Just do it, Graham. And Andrew says, how can we, the people who benefit from what you do, support you? Support the whole online events thing?
Well, tell other people about us. I think, you know, like our finances are really, really limited. You know, we're still small. We're still in that place where we're just moving out of hobby, you know, like little businesses. It's so the more that people can say, have you heard about online events? And I guess, Sandra, we need subscribers, don't we? You know, if anybody can come in the library and spend $4.99 for a month, it makes all the difference in the world for us, because eventually we'd like this to be something that we could make a living at. You know, that's one of the things that we want to do. So the more people that can come in and spend a little bit of money with us, that would make a big difference. Yeah,
and Alexandra saying about Facebook, we're on the social networks. Don't we like doing the tweeting in the Facebook? So, you know, you can find us there and always have a wee conversation or retweet an event maybe that we've got coming up, which is a great way for us to even kind of interact with everybody as further to the events as well. We really enjoy doing that too.
Spread the word, says Andrew. Absolutely.
Yes.
And Sandra's always really modest about this, but I think, like Sandra, your expertise, Sandra, on Facebook and Twitter, learning about how we spread the word on those kind of mediums, it is something that the psychotherapy field is just kind of orientating to.
Yeah.
And I know that's an expertise that we want to be able to help other people with too. So feel free to come along and talk to us, particularly talk to Sandra about that. And I think that is something that we can support the field with in terms of communicating with the globe, hopefully, in a way that reflects that.
Yes.
It's getting a message out empathically. So I think you're doing an amazing job at that, Sandra.
Thank you.
Well, I tell you, a lot of the therapists that I speak with are absolutely terrified of social media. And before they even think about it, they go, no, it's unethical. And I find that terribly upsetting. You know, it's shutting down a whole way of being with people, of learning what people want, of how the world is moving, about how people talk to each other across the world. So Sandra, if you have those skills.
Yes.
Andrew says
I can help.
social media genie.
Oh, that's nice. Yeah, and that as well for me has been learning, and because I wasn't really on a lot of the social media, or social network before, we were doing online events. John is the one that'll find a new thing and go on it. Like I remember Twitter. You remember when you joined Twitter, John, and if there's something happening, John will get his wee handle in and he's on it. And I was like, oh, I don't really know. And I remember the first couple of times, and I don't know what I'm doing. I don't. What's all these people talking about? And that just doing it, and the learning is a great way to do it. But yeah, if we can share that, if anybody needs any help, then that's that's what we can do as well.
Sonia says it's the future, and I think she's right.
Yeah.
Go on, John. Sorry.
And I'm also thinking, like what part of our passion is that, like, in terms of this format, like if somebody's got something to say, let us know and we'll do an event. Like that's also part of. I'm just thinking about how generous everyone's been. Claire, you've done a couple of lectures and interviews with us, and I'm just thinking the generosity, that you've come along and done that with us, along with a lot of people who've given up their time, and it's like, I'm just noticing we are talking about ourselves, and I know that's the purpose of tonight, and we're a bit nervous about it, so we're kind of thinking about all that stuff. But the generosity of it feels like online events is much bigger than Sandra and I. It's a community of people, and the more events that we can do to feed that community and to be fed by that community is. So if it doesn't matter if you've not written a book or done a training course, or but if you've got something you're passionate about, let us know and we're up for it.
Yeah.
When you speak about generosity, I feel able to be generous because that generosity is very reciprocal. I don't want to get into the where we all say how much we love each other, but there is this boundaried, professional way of being that sometimes, in my experience, can be lacking in a lot of therapy. Some therapists can be a bit unreal, but I've sensed a lot of openness and ability to be real here.
I appreciate you saying that, Claire. Yeah, I think that's it's so important for Sandra and I not to. Well, I think it's what draws a lot of people into therapy too. That need to live a genuine life and to do what we're passionate about. And,
right.
And not be caught up in climbing a ladder or all that kind of stuff. And it's not that we don't want to go places too, but
But you're doing it in a way that you both feel comfortable with. So we've got 2 minutes, and I'm wondering in the chat room if anyone has any last minute questions at all.
Yeah, I think. I want to say and it takes about 10 seconds for the question to go. Quiet, John.
Thanks for that.
It's good.
And I think that's part of tonight. I think Sandra and I, we both want to say thank you to the community that has. I know you've said that already, Sandra, but just to reiterate that, so appreciative of how we've all come together, and looking forward to lots more of that.
Yeah, and we've kind of learned as well, along the way that it's, and I suppose it's from a business point of view that it's kind of like any business, maybe doesn't end up exactly what you thought it was going to be, and that the kind of fluidity of that has been our learning process as well, through with everybody, and kind of, as we said before, about kind of trusting that, and following it through. So it is a learning process for us as well, along with everybody.
Daisy has asked a question. Do we have bandwidth to ask and answer it, John?
like a little bit more time around charging for online events?
Yes.
This is something that people ask us all the time, Sandra, don't they?
Yeah.
And I think almost like there's a business model around like bring everybody in and free and free and free and then charge. And we've talked about this a lot, Sandra, haven't we?
So drug dealers won't function.
Yeah.
Your first ones are free.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. And like there's a practical thing, because I think it's hard when you charge for an experience it doesn't work, and like we can't guarantee the internet is going to stay standing during an event. It can fall over at any point, can't it? Our computers, the group's computers, the bits in the middle. So it makes sense to have the experience that we can't guarantee is uncharged or not. So I think there's a practical thing. But it's our philosophy that if someone really can't afford to learn, like to pay for some learning, I mean, I know there's still the charge of the broadband and the device to watch, but we think, well, but that person isn't contributing only by money. And we don't want anyone to not be able to get the experience. So it's like some people can't come along because they don't have time and they're working. So they could use some of that money from the work to pay for the library and watch it later. When I've got less work and I've got more time, I'm more likely to be able to come and donate my experience or contribute my experience and my presence. But I don't have the cash, so I'm not in the library, and that's how we balance it. And I think that's why we don't want to charge for the live experience. That's what really is underneath that, and so we just hope as many people as possible will come and use the library, and that will help us grow and continue. And that's a long answer, Sandra. What do you think?
Yeah, that it's as well as the openness of the learning. Yeah, that we wanted. Like as you say, it's if it can't be accessible, then we kind of how can we make it accessible? You know, is kind of what we wanted, and money can stop that. You know, even if it's a small amount of money, it could stop that getting access to that learning, and that was one of our main, you know, openness. That the live events, would be free, and that not that it's of no value, but it's.
Oh, Sandra.
Oh, we've lost your sound again, Sandra. Can you hear that? Maybe the bandwidth just got squeezed. Oh, the Skype's just calling, bringing Sandra back in a bit. Yeah. Yeah, great. We'll be arriving in a moment. I noticed Nibsy asking how we've both learned from the experience. Time is of the essence too, but we want to get Sandra back, don't we, before we finish? It's amazing. We're just saying we cannot guarantee the internet and computers, and here we are losing Sandra. I mean, thinking about learning, or for me, for the future, is it all right just to blether away before we get Sandra? Because it would be awful to finish without her, wouldn't it?
Yes, it would. But go on, John.
And I think I'm really passionate about the group experience, the face-to-face group experience. I think I need to try and get Sandra in a different way. Let me just see. Oh, Sandra's let me know she's lost us. Okay, add people. Here we go. Live techie stuff. Okay, let's see if we can add. I'm just typing to Sandra, trying to get you back.
Sorry about that.
Oh, you're in. Fantastic. What were you saying there, Sandra? Just
talking to myself.
What were you saying? What did we miss?
Yeah. Well, I think I was, just reiterating what you're saying about the time, that somebody can spend coming along, and that if they didn't have the money that they might lose out on, and our whole point is to to allow that to be free and open in the money sense as well.
Yeah, like the group that has taken some time to come and be with us tonight are paying in their attention. It's not that everyone's here for free. We're all using our time and our energy.
John, you were saying something about face-to-face groups?
Yeah. I love the large person-centered group experience. We've been doing some of that through Temenos and going global, and but I think the chat room is kind of almost, we're all from different modalities and different perspectives, and it's been a real learning to see that we can be in that unstructured group. I mean, I will always, I think, want to go along and be in the room in that experience, but to do it like this digitally has been a real learning and exciting experience. And I think it's part of the kind of devil in me. It's almost, some people would say, I'm never going to go to an encounter group. But in a way, it's what we're doing here. It's what we've been up to tonight. Let's just see what happens. And so the future has hopefully got more of that in me, more of the chat room, or more for me, and more of these large group experiences.
Yeah. And Sandra, I guess the inevitable question is, and don't feel under any pressure at all, would you ever train as a therapist?
Well, that's a good question. And John has also asked me that question. So, but it may be something, in the future, and being exposed to the learning that's on here, and meeting the people, obviously, that we meet online, and it has really opened my eyes to what's out there, and it does make me think, if I was going to train, what is the kind of angle I would go down, or who would I want to work, what kind of groups of people perhaps want to work with. So my mind has been thinking that, so I'll not say no.
Okay.
Not say never, I mean.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
And people who talk to Sandra on email in the chat, well, I'm thinking would agree with this, but I think Sandra's one of the people in life who are kind of natural therapists. Like this, not that the training wouldn't be beneficial, but so I just want to make sure I'm embarrassed.
Knock it out of you.
Well, exactly.
I'd agree with
that's
that.
very kind.
Yeah.
I'm just looking at how grateful people are to you both in the chat room there. You're so inspirational. I want to thank you both so much. Meet you in person someday. Not being able to, I find being able to learn from home is really helpful. Not everyone can travel. Thanks for all you do. It's amazing. I feel such gratitude for what you do, Jonathan. So there's a lot of, really grateful, happy people in the family.
Yes.
And they keep turning up. We keep coming to these events.
Yes. Which is great.
Yeah. Thank you so much, John and Sandra. It's been a real pleasure. Have a great evening, and thanks to everybody in the chat room.
Yeah, thanks, and thank you, Clare, as well. Me and John want to say that to getting us on here and and doing our talking about that is great. It's a great benefit there.
Pleasure.
Thanks for taking such good care of us, Clare. We were both quite nervous about being on the other side of the experience. So
it's been great.
And the time that you've taken as we've prepared for the event. So thank you. And thanks to everyone who's been online with us and just loving the comments and the interaction. Thank you. Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, you have the big red button that goes kapow.
It goes kapow, yeah.
I love that in the chat room, wasn't it? The big red button is kapow. Should I push it, Clare?
I would. See you soon, everyone.
We can say goodbye. Thank you, everyone.
Everyone.